Right, is that better? That's better. Can I remind everybody to be on mute, please? Is everybody muted now? I've still got a back feed. Sorry about this, folks. We have. Okay, this may be fun. I've got to leave the meeting and rejoin, so I do apologise. Right, I'm going to carry on with the meeting while they try and get my computer working, so I shall be relying on officers to say if anybody wants to talk or not. So, welcome to today's meeting, and as I say, I'm very sorry for the delay. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and it will also be available for viewing after the meeting. Due to the current situation, only myself and the Deputy Chairman, Mrs. Seaton, are present in the room. The remaining members of the committee, along with those officers presenting today, will be joining us, along with the officers will be joining online. For those of you in the room, please remember to switch your microphone on before you speak and turn it off when you have finished speaking. For those joining the meeting via Skype, can I please ask that all members and officers have their microphones on mute until they wish or are invited to speak. When you are speaking, please turn your video on. Can I now ask members joining online to introduce themselves and say, and as I understand there are no substitutes today, so that they can hear us and are carrying on. Dr. Feltham.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Kaufman.
Yes, here in Oakley.
Thank you. Mrs. Page. Mrs. Page, we'll come back to Mrs. Page in a minute. Mr. Parton.
Good afternoon, everybody from Upper South Division.
Mr. Sheehan.
Hi, thank you.
Mr. Welsh.
Yes, good afternoon, I'm present.
Thank you. Mrs. Wright.
Yes, good afternoon from Burbage.
Thank you. Mrs. Lewis.
Good afternoon, I'm present.
Thank you. And I'll go back to Mrs. Page. Are you with us now? I'm sure she'll join us as she can. So we now move on to the agenda. The minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March 2020, pages 5 to 10 on your agenda papers. I propose that the The minutes of the meeting held on 3rd of 2020 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is everybody in agreement?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Question time. We have received 7 questions from 3 members of the public. Mrs. Louise Engels, Mrs. Sue Whiting, and Mrs. Gillian Bowers. Can I ask you all to remain on mute until you are asking your supplementary question? I would also like to say that after you've asked your supplementary question, would you, you're more than welcome to stay in the meeting by listening to us, but your microphone must be muted, and if there is any interference or any comments, I'm afraid we will cut you off from the rest of the meeting. So if I can now call on, all the questions have been circulated to members of the committee just prior to the start of this meeting and will be taken as read. I would like to remind members that no discussion is to be held on these questions. I will first invite Mrs. Engels to ask any supplementary question, and you can ask up to 3 supplementary questions, as there were 3 elements to your question. I would remind you that your supplementary question should be to clarify the reply you have been given and should not raise any new issues. Can I confirm that everybody can see or hear Mrs. Engels? Mrs. Engels?
Hello.
Thank you. Following any supplementary questions, I will ask the officers to see if they can respond to your supplementary. So, Mrs. Engels, if you would like to ask your supplementary questions.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for answering my original questions. I did ask an original question about resolution of disagreements. The answer came back to emphasise about support and advice through SENDIAS, but in particular I'm interested in actual service of resolution of disagreements, and I would like to know what support do the LA give to parents to resolve disagreements for all children and young people with SEND, not just those with EHC plans, and how SEND duties are carried out by the LA or the education setting or SEND provision. Chapter 11 of the SEND Code of Practice does include that the LA's duties are to arrange disagreement resolution services, in addition to support and advice through SENDIAS and EHCP mediation. So I would like to ask what actual resolution of disagreements the LA has, and if they haven't got or aren't providing those, what can parents do when they know that there's a difficulty between school and them, as schools' complaints processes aren't very effective. And that's really my question, is what is the formal resolution of disagreements, and if not, what do we do?
Thank you. Is Jane, Jane Moore, are you going to answer this question, or will you come back?
Yeah, I can answer this question. So if I just pick up your first supplementary question. So as described in our earlier response, the local authority does commission SENDIAS to support families where there's a disagreement. If there is an issue between a school and a parent for a child with an education, health and care plan, the SENA do undertake informal meetings with parents and carers to try and reach a resolution, and that's our duty under the Code of Practice. If we are commissioning a placement or SENDIAS services and parents display concerns, then it's also our duty to look into this in more detail. So whilst we don't have an LA local authority formal disagreement resolution service, there are processes in place to resolve any disagreements, and this would include social care and early help where appropriate. So in terms of SEND support, the new inclusion service is the service that can support parents and settings in best identifying how children's needs can be met. But in addition to this, the local authority do commission Global to undertake formal mediation. But before they move into this formal process, there are opportunities to disagree, that look at that further. And informal disagreement resolution can take place. Parents are signposted to this, and when the Senate service correspond with them, we can give more information to parents about that, and that's part of a regional contract that we've got with Global. If there is a disagreement about any decisions made, particularly by parents, the Senate service and other partners where appropriate would endeavour to meet informally before moving into formal mediation. And this could include where a decision, for example, has been made not to assess for an education, health and care plan when a child is receiving SEND support. So I'll just pick up your second supplementary question as well around the Chapter 11. So as I've just mentioned, the Senate service do endeavour to always resolve issues informally in the first instance, and to reduce the need for complaints or indeed involvement by the local government authority, and involvement, as described above. But we do use global services who are available to resolve disagreements, as well as in offering that more formal mediation service.
Thank you very much. As I said earlier, you're welcome to carry on to listen to the rest of the Pardon? Do you have another question, Mr. Zango? Sorry about that. If you'd like to ask your other question now.
Yeah, I asked about Not Fine in School, which I am a part of, and I would like to confirm, if and when the Not Fine in School representative will be invited to for future co-production events. And I did ask this a year ago and was told that I would be consulted, or we would be consulted, and we are specialists in supporting parents with children's school refusal and school attendance. So we have now the intervention framework, which I think is really useful to the local authority to support families based on current government policy and procedures. So we currently have 11,800 members nationally that we support, and so I'm really keen to support our local families in Not Fine in Schools through working alongside, perhaps, as you mentioned before, inclusion team. But can you confirm that we are still welcome to work with you, and when that would be likely to be?
Yes, absolutely. So we did hold workshops in between November 2018 and January 19, and we invited a number of groups to attend these workshops, and Not Fine in School were included in that invite to take part in that workshop. We are committed at the local authority to working closely with parent and carer support groups in not just developing services but reviewing services, and absolutely more than happy to include Not Fine in School in these consultations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As I was saying, Mrs. Angles, you're welcome to stay, but you must mute your microphone, and if we hear any extraneous noises from your microphone, we will terminate the call. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Right, I now move to Mrs. Whiting for a supplementary question. Mrs. Whiting?
Hello, yes. Thank you for your response to my question, which I find I need more clarification, as I still do not know whether another document will need to be published for Ofsted CQC, specifically addressing the significant weaknesses, or whether the many families impacted by the negative findings of the Ofsted CQC report will receive a public apology. I would be very grateful if you could A, confirm whether the Children and Family Service Departmental Plan 2020-2023 addresses all the significant weaknesses identified by Ofsted CQC, or will another document be required to be published before the end of July? And B, confirm that given the great many strengths identified in the Ofsted CQC report, plus the vision, mission and values contained in the Children and Families Departmental Plan, that the many families impacted by the negative findings of the Ofsted CQC report. Too many plans are inaccurate, too many EHC plans do not provide the quality of information, there is no effective system in place to assure the quality and usefulness of EHC plans, will receive a public apology.
Thank you, and I will ask Jane Moore to respond to your supplementary, and again, Wednesday, that will be it at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. So just in response to your first question around the whether the department plan addresses the significant weaknesses, no, there's a separate document required to be produced as a result of the inspection. So following the inspection in February and subsequent publication of the report in May, we are, as you've set out, required to produce a written statement of action based on the significant weaknesses that were found through the inspection. So those two significant areas that you've identified. So our response as a local area, so not just the local authority, but the clinical commissioning groups and other partners as well, is that we need to produce that written statement of action within and submit that to Ofsted and the CQC within 70 days from the date of publication of the report. So it won't be published before the end of July. There's a longer period that allows us to produce that written statement of action and ensure that that written statement of action is co-produced with parents and carers and children and young people across Leicestershire. And then in response to your second supplementary question around public apology, we'll consider any representations made to us, and if it is appropriate in an individual case, we would offer an apology, as is our usual practice.
Thank you. Those were your three supplementaries, I believe, Mrs. Whiting.
Yes, thank you.
I think
the reason I wanted to ask that was because...
No, because, Mrs. Whiting, if I may, you've had the answer to your three questions
okay,
at this time.
thank you very much.
As I say, you're more than welcome to stay and listen, but you must mute your microphone, and if there are any interruptions, we'll terminate the call. Thank you very much. Now, finally, I will lastly invite Mrs. Bowers to ask your supplementary question, and up to three supplementary questions, as there were three elements to your original question. Mrs. Bowers, are you there? And if you'd like to go ahead, thank you.
Hi, hope you can hear me. Thank you very much again, as the other people have said. Thank you very much for allowing me to ask questions. I appreciate it, and thank you for the answers you've already given me. My first supplementary question is, on what actual date will the written statement of action be issued, and who is it issued to on that date, and how is it going to be shared with parents and carers, please?
Jane Moore, would you like to answer that now, or would you prefer to have all three questions at once?
No, I'll pick this one up now. As a result of the inspection, with the written statement of action is due to be submitted to Ofsted and the CQC within 70 days of the report being published. So that's a nationally set timescale. Due to COVID-19, this date has been extended, and we are currently awaiting our final submission date from Ofsted. So it'll be in and around about 70 days of the report being published. In terms of how it will be shared with parents and carers, obviously it will be published on the Ofsted and CQC website, and we will also publish it on our local offer. However, as I said in the previous question, the written statement of action will be co-produced with parents and carers, so it will be developed in collaboration with parents and carers of children with SEND, but also with other stakeholders and others involved in Leicestershire. So that parents and carers will be involved in the development of it, also will certainly have access to it prior to it being published.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Jane. My second supplementary question is when are these co-production meetings with parents and carers, and how will you ensure fair representation of as wide a range of needs and disabilities as Ofsted and CQC did in their inspection? And you mentioned in your answer to me to question 2 about consulting with children. So how many children are you aiming to collate information from, and what will be the mechanism for this, which again enables as wide a range of needs and disabilities to be included?
Yeah, thank you. So we're currently working through the best way to hold consultation sessions. And obviously, in terms of the current position that we're in around COVID-19, we are far more restricted than we would want to be. So ordinarily, we would want to bring people together to have face-to-face conversations, but know that that's not going to be possible for the foreseeable future. So the Send and Inclusion Board, in which parents and carers are represented, are currently looking at what the best possible way would be to formally and informally consult with parents and carers and children, young people and other stakeholders. And that work will take place across the summer period and indeed has started. We obviously are absolutely committed to ensuring that not only are those sessions fully inclusive, but that they do have a really good representation of people from across Leicestershire, but it also enable everybody to have a strong voice. So in answer to your question around how many children we collate information from, I can't give you a definite answer. We would want as wide a range of children as possible. So I won't be setting a kind of limited number of children we would want to engage with. We have a number of forums through which we work at the moment in terms of engaging children and young people, including through their schools or other education settings. And then obviously we do engage with a number of parent and carer representation groups, and we will also be going out more publicly for wider consultation as well. So we're just working through what those arrangements need to look like, bearing in mind the position that we're currently in. Okay,
thank you for that, Jane, as well. And that sounds really positive. My last question. I'm co-chair of Leicestershire Adopters and Foster Carers Support Group, and we're the only group in Leicestershire which represents all care experienced children and their families. And as so far, we've not had any involvement in feedback or co-production of plans. Will a representative of our group, which we call LAFS, be invited to co-production meetings and events in future, as we're keen to really ensure this key group of most vulnerable children in the county and their families are represented fully and their views incorporated fully into future planning?
Yes, of course, we would welcome the involvement of the Leicestershire Adopters and Foster Carer Support Group. And we know that there's been some kind of delay in contact over this period. But we've spoken to 2 of our service managers who are now going to lead on seeking the views and contact through all of the Leicestershire Foster Carers and Adopters Group. And I know that you already have well-established relationships with those 2 service areas in fostering and adoption.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As with the other speakers, you are more than welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the committee meeting, but we would appreciate your microphone switched off and no interference, please, otherwise we'll have to terminate the call. Thank you. We now move on to item 3 of the agenda, which is questions asked by members under Standing Orders 7.3 and 7.5. I've received no questions from members. and I have not been notified of any urgent items that need to be taken under item 4 of the agenda. I have not received any declarations of interest. Does any member have any interest that they wish to declare at this time? I take that as a no. Thank you. There are no.
Thank you.
Sorry. Did someone say that?
I'll say no, thank you.
Okay. There's no declarations of the party whip. In accordance with Overview and Scrutiny Procedure 16, I have not been notified. Do any members have any declarations? No. Thank you. Item 7, the presentation of petitions under Standing Order 36. There are no petitions. So we now move on to the first major item of the agenda, which is the Draft Children and Family Services Departmental Plan 2020-2023, which starts on page 11 of your agenda. So I will ask Jane Moore to lead us through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to present for comment and consideration the draft Leicestershire Children and Family Service Departmental Plan. The draft plan is for the 2023 period and has been developed to fulfil the statutory duties that provide a basis for our vision in the department, our planning, commissioning and delivery of services until 2023. So the draft Children and Family Services Department Plan is aligned to the County Council's strategic plan and aims to set out how the department will contribute to the delivery and achievement of the Council's 5 strategic outcomes. It also aligns to the Leicestershire Children and Families Partnership Plan, of which you've got an update on your agenda next. So the priorities in our last department plan have become our ambitions in this new department plan, but this year's plan has included more of a focus through the inclusion of a set of priorities for each of the ambitions. And we've developed those ambitions based on what we know about our children and young people in Leicestershire through consultation, what our data and performance tells us, and also what we know are some of the most important factors for children and young people's positive development. So the draft department plan sets out 4 ambitions, and we've detailed on page 12 the associated priority actions. So the 4 ambitions for the department for the next 3 years are around helping every child to get the best possible start in life, and the priorities related to that are around focused attention to those areas that we know have the greatest impact on children in the first few years of their life. The second priority is around helping children and their families build strength, resilience and confidence and capacity. The third ambition is around helping children in Leicestershire to live in safe, stable environments and have secure attachments. And then the fourth ambition is around every child having access to good quality education to ensure that they achieve their maximum potential. And all of this and all of the ambitions point towards our vision, which is around wanting Leicestershire to be the best place for children and families to grow up in. So it is our intention to launch the Children and Families Department Plan in late June, and obviously our ambition to launch the plan very publicly and with people may well need to be reviewed, but it is still our intent that we do launch the plan late June, and we're just working through what that can look like in the current climate. There was a whole raft of consultation that took place in order to develop the plan, and a lot of that was based on what we do on a kind of day-to-day basis around actively seeking the feedback from children with whom we work, young people and families as part of that direct work, but also through specific engagement activities through a number of forums. So we have a very strong Children's Youth Council for Leicestershire, which has been established for a number of years. We have a Children in Care Council that represents the views of all of our children in care. We have a Supporting Young People After Care Council who work with those young people who have now left our care, and we work very closely with the Send Parent Carer Forum, and as I've said in the previous answers, a number of other forums that we regularly liaise with. So the views of these children and families and parents of carers have been considered as part of the development of this plan. The plan has also been shaped by the key themes that came from the Make Your Mark campaign, which was done in 2019, which is a national youth ballot. We had over 9,000 young people from across Leicestershire voting on the issues that were most important to them, and we've built in those issues into the plan as well. So the committee is being asked to consider and comment on the draft plan as it stands at the moment. So I'll leave it there, Chair, to invite questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there are one or two questions. The first one I have is, Mr. Sheehan, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Jane. Can you give some examples of where service user feedback or best practice from elsewhere has directly informed a component of the plan?
Have you got that, Jane, or is someone else going to take it, or are you going to come back?
I have. You'll just have to give me a moment to
okay,
scroll
that's
down
fine.
to the page in the plan that details some of that service user feedback that Mr. Sheehan's asked about. So if you can just bear with me, I'm just scrolling down. So what we've done throughout the plan is woven in some of the feedback that we've had from children and families, as well as parents and carers. So if I take you down to one of the sections and just highlight some of the feedback. So if I can just take you to page 39 of the plan. There's a number of bits of feedback that we've highlighted there that have informed some of the thinking within the plan. So some of it has been about direct feedback around what services have worked for parents. Some of it has been around things that parents have told us have had a direct impact for their children. And also some of the feedback of things that haven't worked quite as well. So you can see on page 39, we've got some information there that indicates where a service has had an impact, not just for the child, but for a parent, and being really clear that that's really important for families, but also some of the feedback around some of the positive tools that have been given. So if you look throughout the plan, there are a number of sections where we've included feedback from children and families, and a lot of that is used to not only highlight what's important for children and families, and but also what's worked in terms of our services.
Thank you. Is that all right, Mr. Sheehan, for the moment?
Well, I was hoping that Jane could give more of a linkage between the feedback. There's some very good examples of feedback within the plan. What I was looking for is how that actually linked up to developments within the plan itself. But I'm happy to let that go for now, and we'll pick that up later.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parton, you had a question regarding this item?
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Jane. Without placing the two plans together, specifically the plan that's in place currently and the new draft plan side by side, what is specifically new in this plan? Now, obviously, Jane, on page 16, it is stated that the key change is the removal of improving children's emotional health and well-being as a separate and discrete strategic priority. What else is there that's actually different in these two plans?
So I think really significantly, the key priorities that were in the plan, our previous plan, have remained our ambitions for in this plan. So in terms of change there is no change. The things that we believed were a priority, or the things that our children and families were telling us were a priority in our last plan, absolutely remain our priority. And those are the kind of high level, more strategic things that we want to absolutely focus on. So having ensuring children have the best start in life, access to education, resilient families, all of the things that we know are the kind of bedrock of things that help for our children and families. So in terms of change there isn't change. As I said in the introduction, one of the things that we have done is put in some more focused priorities around what we would want to focus on in order to achieve some of those ambitions that we've set out in the plan. And you're right, one of the significant changes we did make was that we had a separate priority around children and families' mental health, or children's mental health and wellbeing. And we very deliberately took that out as an ambition because we wanted it to be woven throughout all of the ambition of the plan. So that was probably the most significant change that we made in developing this plan, was about making sure that that focus on children's wellbeing and mental health was woven through the plan, and each of the ambitions takes heed and takes notice of that focus.
Thank you very much. A second question is, Chair, please, is regarding the KPIs, the performance figures and the aspirations that we're seeking to gain in this new plan. So, for example, there are percentage changes that you're looking to achieve. Now, of course, statistics are best viewed when they are in comparison with others. So with regard to the figures, the KPIs we're looking to move in terms of percentages in various criteria, can they be compared, please, to what we've currently achieved? So, for example, where you've got, like, you're seeking to improve something by a couple of percentage points, have we already improved them in this period, or were they stagnant, or did they deteriorate, and so we're looking to return to a level in the plan before that? So that is what we would appreciate to see, some sort of performance figures in relation to previous ones, please.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So what we've detailed in the plan, as you've set out, is what we're seeking to achieve through the delivery of the plan. One of the things I will say is that I think we can do some more work on the section around impact and outcomes, because what we would really want to include in there is some numbers and kind of give a little bit more context around exactly what it is we're seeking to achieve. So we have already taken some feedback on that, which is really helpful. What we will be producing, and what we produce obviously to this committee on a quarterly basis, is our performance suite. So the outcomes that we're seeking to achieve through here will be reported on a quarterly basis, and included in that will be the percentages that we've set out, but it will also include the numbers that we're looking at. It will include regional comparators, and it also includes kind of, you know, where we are in terms of quartile performance as well. So all of the things that you've set out that we do need to be looking at will be included in our quarterly performance reports, which reports on this plan.
Thank you very much. Jane, there was a couple of points I'd like to raise, if I may, just before anybody else wants to speak. On the page 39, 38, the impact and outcomes. You've already mentioned about the percentages being able to have more numerical numbers against them, so that it's relevant, more relevant than just a straight percentage. Also, we normally do ask this, is that where there are things like NEAT and fee, if they could be written out in full, not everybody is aware or knows what those initials mean. And I think if, rather than go through the whole report and point it out, if you could just have a quick scan, word search or something, so that we do keep it right. And it is really, if we're talking about numbers, NEAT 2.2% is rather out of what, is not really helpful. The only figure I'd got really to work through, that there were nearly 137,000 children up to the age of 17 in Leicestershire. So when we're looking at it, is trying to relate it, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we can absolutely look at that. So first is an apology that the document does contain a number of acronyms. So we will rectify that because obviously it's still in draft. So we will rectify that to make sure that those are clear. And then, yeah, in terms of the section on page 38 of the document that sets out our impact and outcomes, again, we will relook at that so that we can make sure that the percentages and figures that we're giving you are absolutely in context. So we'll either add numbers or some comparators, or so we will do some more work on that. So thank you.
Also, I'd just like, I'm sure everybody's having the same thought in a way. This draft plan is being put forward to Cabinet at the end of June, and then it comes out, is the fact that we are in a different world now, and I think because of COVID-19 and we won't know for some months the impact or the effect it's had on our children and families. So there may have to be slight alterations or changes in what our priorities are and our aims, because children that may not normally have come under our radar may now be impacted by some of them having maybe up to 5 or 6 months out of education or social contact. So it will become, I would imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, obviously, more of a living document that will have to, as more information comes out, but there will be a lot of national statistics and information, but we are concerned with the children of Leicestershire.
Yes, so we will be reviewing the department plan in line with looking at what the impact for the department is and our children around COVID. So we'll do that in a number of ways. One is that obviously as a department we're currently working through how we will step back up our services and continue delivering as we have been delivered throughout this period, but also what might need to be either additional or different for children as well. So we will be reviewing the department plan in light of the COVID-19 situation, and I think what the plan allows us to do is add some additional priorities should we need to in light of that review and certainly what we know about COVID-19 and the impact it's going to have on children across Leicestershire.
Thank you. Mrs. Page, I think you had a comment or a question or something you'd like to bring in? Mr. Parton, I'm sorry. You had something you wanted to ask for clarification?
It was for clarification, please. And I apologise if this seems that I am labouring this point rather. However, for clarification with Jane's answer, are we saying that whilst in future meetings the suite of figures provided will be of the current plan, are we also saying that they will also be presented with regards to previous data in past plans and past years? That was for clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Parson, I wasn't clear. Yeah, when we present our performance data, we present the data from the most recent quarter. We compare it to the previous quarter's data, or indeed previous year's data, and then we also compare it to regional comparators. So it enables members to see the progress or changes in the performance over a period of time. So yes, sorry, I should have been clearer in my last response.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have no notification of any other questions. Mrs. Seaton, sorry, Mrs. Seaton, if you'd like to ask a question.
Well, it's not really asking a question. It's commenting about the plan. It has come to us a number of times on its plan. to do the plan, and I liked reading it. It was quite clear and concise. It set out the intentions, and it also set out the measurements that you're going to use to make sure that the plan achieves making a difference. As I say, I like the plan. It's got a few tweaks on there with making sure that the acronyms are taken out, probably some numbers instead of the percentages, and remove the statement, putting rather that your vision that Leicester will be the best, is to be the best for all children. So well done, thank you very much.
Jane, did you want to come back on that before we move on to the next item?
No, thank you, Mrs. Seaton. I think we know that we have got some amendments to make in terms of clarifying the plan, but welcome the comments around its clarity for children and families in Leicestershire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no other notifications of any speakers wishing to speak, so we'll move on to the item 9, which commences on page 55 of your agenda, which is the Leicestershire Children and Families Partnership Plan 2018-21 progress update. And I think, is it yourself, Jane, or have we got another gentleman wanting to speak to this?
Yeah, I'll bring in, and my colleague Marla will present the plan for you. So this report is a progress update on the Children and Families Partnership Plan, and members will recall that we have brought regular updates to you on the delivery of this plan. So I'll hand over to Marla, and she will take you through a little bit more detail in terms of the update. So I'll hand over to Marla. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm Marla Razak, I'm the Children and Families Partnership Manager. As Jane has said, the purpose of the report is to present a progress update on the Children and Families Partnership Plan 2018-21. The purpose of the partnership is to champion effective partnership working, and the purpose of the plan is to provide a summary of those key areas of work that would be best delivered together in order to have the biggest impact on the lives of children and young people across Leicestershire. The partnership adopted 5 supporting outcomes identified in the Joint Health Wellbeing Strategy and as the key areas of focus for the partnership plan. Across those 5 areas, a lot of work has been carried out. Some of the progress to date, looking over the past year, have been in relation to priority 1, ensuring the best start in life, launch of materials around the 1001 days, critical days, and school readiness have been produced, and these have been the first time we've had a shared resource developed by the partnership for use by partners across the partnership that will help us to have clear, consistent messages for children and families, to support children and families in understanding how to support them to have the best start in life. For priority 2, which is around keeping children safe and free from harm, a key area of progress has been the launch of a communication campaign to raise awareness around child criminal exploitation. As we know, that child criminal exploitation is an area that is of increasing concern, so being able to have shared resources again across the partnership, which will help the public and professionals to understand what child criminal exploitation is about and signs to be looking out for and where to go for support are really important. In relation to priority 3, supporting children and families to be resilient, work has been undertaken with secondary schools and the local enterprise partnership to promote the take-up of the advisor programme and to help with the delivery of effective careers guidance. the progress has been made that's been made on that has been really effective, and now the majority of secondary schools and colleges are working with an advisor to support their careers guidance. In relation to priority 4, ensuring vulnerable families receive personalised integrated care and support, one of the key developments has been the establishment of a joint solutions panel to help identify opportunities for integrated assessment and commissioning of appropriate resources for our most vulnerable children. And in relation to priority 5, one of the key developments has been our multi-agency approach to start progressing a systems-wide way of addressing adverse childhood experiences. So the partnership have agreed to adopt the trauma-aware systems change model as our framework for developing a more trauma-aware system approach across Leicestershire, and work is being progressed across the 5 strands of community, workforce, prevention, commissioning, and increased access to intervention. In relation to the voice of young people, we have a youth campaign group attached to the partnership that was developed to help ensure that the voice of children is being fed through into the decision making of the partnership board. The group has been focused over the past few months on knife crime, which was the #1 issue identified in the 2018-2019 Make Your Mark youth ballot. They've been involved in a number of areas of work to address this, including a piece of work that they're engaged in currently, working with the Leicester City Football's community charity to produce a video and a slogan campaign aimed at raising awareness of the impact of knife crime. They had hoped to be launching that in time to coincide with the sighting of the Knife Angel statue that was to take place in the county in May. However, obviously due to COVID and lockdown, that has been postponed. They will be aiming to take part with that activity, which has been planned for May 2021 now. Some key areas of work that will be taking place over the next 6 months will include the development of a joint CCG local authority neonatal pathway to offer contact between the Children and Family Wellbeing Service and referral to Portage home-based teaching where it's identified as appropriate, and the pilot of a two to school programme, again by the Children and Family Wellbeing Service, working with early years providers in Oadby, which will involve the delivery of workshops and interactive displays, providing advice and information at a key point so that they're working together to provide the same messages to children and families to help their children to be school ready. Don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you. I believe I have Mrs. Seaton and then Mr. Parton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for that presentation. My question, well, it's not really a question, it's an observation and then a question leading from it. It's a huge subgroup of the Health and Wellbeing Board. There are so many agencies involved in this. Who takes the lead? Which agency takes the lead on this, or does it vary depending on what you are dealing with at the time? I have trouble working with my husband, so I mean just working with that amount of different agencies that all have their own different agendas to work with is an accomplishment in itself. Is it working well? And yeah, who takes the lead? Thank you.
Shall I? I can pick up the answer to that, Mrs. Seaton, and then I'll hand over to Ivan as well. So the chair of the partnership is Ivan Old. So he'll come and comment on the leadership of that board. But we're very fortunate to have Ivan as the chair of that board in terms of pulling together. And again, each of the priority areas are led by a senior officer from the partnership. So part of driving that work is done through a senior officer who is represented at each of those boards. And we're very fortunate to have a senior officer lead from a range of different agencies. So I think the partnership board is big. It does have a range of agencies, but I think that reflects not just the importance of focus of children for all of those agencies, but actually the breadth and kind of wealth of services that are available for children and families. So part of why it works is that agencies are really committed to the partnership. They're very committed to working together, and those officers who are leading each of the priority areas then drive that work through other subgroups that again pull agencies together. But I'll hand over to Ivan because I know he would want to comment.
Thank you, Jane. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
The partnership is really critical for the future of children and families in the county. I've taken it upon myself, with the support of Marla and Jane, to have regular meetings with the leads of the 5 areas. It's fair to say that 4 of those areas have worked well. One has not got to where I personally would have liked it to have got to, but that maybe is because I make a lot of demands on people. It is rather invigorating to sit down with Jane when it's not me having to be told what I need to do, but to be able to question her on her area of responsibility. It worked well. It particularly worked well with the police, and it pulled everybody together. It is, having been with the old Children's Trust Board when that was around, this is much more dynamic, much more ongoing, and I think provides a vehicle for harmonising services to the benefit of children and young people and families across the county.
Thank you. Did Marla want to come back as well on this point?
Sorry, I would like to just come back on that and just say, well, I think it's a tremendous achievement to get all of these lead agencies singing, I'm going to say it, so I can't believe I'm going to say it, singing from the same hymn sheet, because it is remarkably hard, especially if you've got to pull one along with you as well, which it sounds as if everybody is working towards the same goal. So it's a great credit to you, Ivan, and to Jane to make this work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to come back on anything before we move on to the next item? Oh, Mr. Parton, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you. The main 5 points are quite clear, especially something though that, and it's difficult for Ivan and Jane to really answer this because, to be fair, this is the police's input into this. But I do find it quite interesting that the wording that one of the issues that was brought to the fore was along the lines of knife crime. Now, clearly, knife crime is not as widespread as the inner London boroughs, but what I would have preferred to have seen, and again, this is going to sound as if I'm presupposing the police and their priorities and their vastly superior expertise than to mine, but it's the fact that there's no mention of protecting young people against Class A, B and C drugs. As an example to this, and probably it's quite a raw emotion, not 2 hours before this meeting, when I nipped to the shop, I just happened to observe a child under the age of 16 clearly buying drugs, which of course I immediately reported to the police. And to me, in Loughborough South, that's what I perceive as much more of a problem than knife crime. So I would not want that to be lost as something that's of critical importance.
Yeah, I think if I can come back in, Hilary, the issue of knife crime came about because the Cycle, which is the county youth group, came and did an incredibly powerful presentation to us, one that is still very vivid for me. When you've got 15, 16, 17-year-olds coming in and saying that they are terrified of the fact that when they go out, most of their friends are carrying a knife and are prepared to use it, that is really important. But that isn't exclusive, because linked into that is county lines, linked into that is the inclusion programme for schools, which maintains a safety net for young people who struggle within the normal requirements of school. And beyond that, you've then got the clinical commissioning groups coming in, and Mike Sands from Public Health as well. So each area, each of the 5 areas is subdivided. And as Jane knows only too well, and I think probably Deborah too, one of the areas that I personally push is the need for smart targets, set within a time frame, hence why I personally met with each lead, went through the targets, how relevant were they, did we need to add to them, could we remove any, what would be the reset target, kept a record of, and then produced the new document. It is a very organic partnership. So what we did 10 months ago is not going to be what we're doing now in its entirety. It may be 60% of what we're doing now, and in another year's time it may only be 20%, because there are other influences that come along. I agree with you about the provision of drugs to young people, but then again, when through the Troubled Families programme that the government brought in, I remember again extremely vividly in the Hinckley area, a mother of 35 telling us how her father had started rolling wreaths for her when she was 12 years old. And it gives you some idea of the scale of problems that are facing a group of young people out there.
Thank you, Ivan. Jane, you would wish to come back on this point as well?
Yeah, it was Ivan's covered most of what I would have wanted to say. So I guess the only addition I would want to make is that the priorities have been set by the partnership, and indeed have been heavily influenced by what children and young people across Leicestershire have told us are important to them, and knife crime is and remains one of the highest priority for children across Leicestershire. Nevertheless, the issues that you've raised around substance misuse and availability of drugs for young people is a critical issue. And remains a critical issue for partners across the piece. So included in the plan, and what we haven't done is in this paper is give you an overview of all of the work in the plan. It's an update on some of the progress areas. So a lot of the work around child criminal exploitation is based around substance misuse and indeed the selling of substances. So some of it will be picked up in the paper that Sharon and Donna present later, but it absolutely, I guess I wanted to reassure you, it is absolutely a priority for us, and continues to be a priority for the partnership as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no other people waiting to speak on this item, so we'll move on to item 10, which is the report on children in need of help and protection. And that starts on page 61 of your papers. And Sharon, I think, is presenting this. Or is it...
Yes, Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the panel. I'm going to introduce and take you through the details in the report that's been provided for you, and then my colleague Gareth Dakin, who's the head of Fieldwork Services in Social Care, is here so we can both answer any supplementary questions you may have. I hope that the report before you provides a good overview of the work of children's social care regarding children in need and those in need of protection. We have tried in the report to provide you with both the legal framework that we work within, evidence and information rather about the structure and our structure of the service, and the performance targets that we measure ourselves, Ofsted and the Department of Education measure us against. So if I take you through to paragraph 6 to 9, that talks to you about the structural changes of our locality fieldwork services that took place in October 2018, when we moved from having within localities strengthening families teams and child protection teams to having teams that dealt with children right across that spectrum and ensured via our pod working that we have outlined and described within the report. But the key message for us, and learning from research from elsewhere, but also from discussions with children and families, was that we should endeavour to not have a number of changes of workers for children and families, and by having the previous structure we were building in what we thought was one too many potential changes of workers for children. Paragraph 10 onwards describes the structure of our front door and first response. So this is the service that receives work into the department and processes that work either into children's social care, into our targeted early help, or can signpost onto other services outside of our own services if that is right for the family. It talks about and provides for you some evidence to date that our contact and referral rates have continued to remain stable, and to update committee, during COVID-19 we as other authorities initially saw a vast reduction in the number of contacts coming in the first few weeks of lockdown, but that as soon sort of got us back to the rates that we ordinarily experience. We've worked hard, and the evidence is there to show some really good performance, particularly at the front door, in relation to the number of assessments that we complete in respect of children, but also the timeliness of those assessments. And that measure is not an artificial measure. It's a measure working on a basis that it is right and proper that we, as soon as possible, are able to identify the assessed needs of those children requiring our service, and are then able to put in place the appropriate plans. So the performance at the front door is actually an extremely high performance, and that's measured against not only our statistical neighbours, but also we measure ourselves against outstanding authorities on all aspects of our performance. Our re-referral rate is monitored, continually monitored. The reason for that is that we want to understand if children have been referred back into a service, as to whether that is an understandable re-referral, so at a point in time or another point in time a family require a service from us, or whether that re-referral has come about because we haven't in the first instance got our assessment and the support that family needed. Our re-referral rate for the year to date has been positive and measured favourably against statistical neighbours, and others. But we have seen over the last 2 months an increase in that rate, and we've currently got some work underway in our quality assurance and performance arm of the service that's looking with the service, the operational arm, about what that re-referral rate is about and whether that is linked to what's happening around COVID-19 or whether there is some other reason for that. So we are investigating that increase over the recent months. Paragraph 22 gives the information about the number of children that we work with. We then explain, within children's locality teams. We've talked about the performance and evidence around strategy discussions, which are the multi-agency discussions that take place if there are safeguarding concerns in respect of a child or young person, and Section 47 investigations, which are the investigations either undertaken as a single agency by social care or jointly with colleagues from the police if there are child protection concerns that require further investigation and assessment. We've outlined in the report our work and feedback from Ofsted and how our working around children in need and child protection links to our continuous improvement plan and the road to excellence. And panel members will be aware that we periodically provide for panel an update on our progress against that continuous improvement plan. And finally, we've provided a key area of work around recruitment and retention, and we've been to panel on a number of occasions to present the issues facing us and nationally the social work profession around difficulties on recruitment and retention, and panel members have received previously our work around a strategy for recruitment and retention. We wanted, as part of this report, to provide you with an overview of some of that work and the impact of that work, particularly on our locality fieldwork teams, where it's fair to say we have in particular localities experienced some difficulties in recruitment of permanent staff, and in those areas, as you'll be aware, we made a commitment to use agency social workers whilst the recruitment took place, so that we are ensured that we can provide a timely service to children requiring our service. What I would draw your attention to around the recruitment and retention is that since 2017, our turnover rate, so that's the staff that are leaving the authority, are vastly improved. Our vacancy rate over time decreased. We have seen a slight increase in the last quarter, but that's linked to that we've been in the fortunate position of being able to, or being awarded some growth monies and being able to recruit, and are in the process of recruiting to some additional social work posts. And whilst we recruit those posts, we, as a service, agreed agency cover to cover, as I've outlined before, to ensure that services could be provided. So there is a slight increase in agency rates, and vacancy rates, but that's linked to, without underestimating the complexities around recruitment and retention, it is linked to the number of permanent posts that we have within the service has increased significantly. I think that gives an overview of the information that's in the report, and obviously open that to questions that you may have of myself or Gareth.
Thank you very much. I have Mr. Kaufman, you had a question or a point you'd like to raise.
Thank you, Chair. Can I go to page 62, the paragraph 12? I'm very concerned. I was concerned at the start of the paragraph when 1 in every 5 query that went out was wrongly assigned, and I'm even more concerned to see that it's gone up to 28.5%. And I would be very interested to know the result of this audit work, because I think that is, it's the front door of the organisation. It's the first impressions people will get. And I think I'm concerned that even the 20%, if I understand it correctly, 20% of all queries that go on there are wrongly addressed. So do you think it's appropriate, Chair, that some short report on the audit work of trying to find this out ought to be coming back to us at some time?
Sharon, did you want to come back?
Yeah, if I can clarify that point, and by all means, I can bring the audit work back to this full committee, or I can take it to the child protection smaller committee to look at in detail, whichever members require. The re-referral rate is not necessarily that case or that child has been referred to our front door and no further action has been taken. That would include any child that's had involvement from our service at any point. So this could be a child or a family that have had a service as a child in need or child protection over a period of time. We have worked with that family and got that family to a position where they agree and we agree that they no longer require our services, and at some point in the future, during that child's childhood, they can be referred back into the service. So I wouldn't want members, if that's not been clear, I wouldn't want you to believe that these are children that are coming in and out of the service at some speed. Some of the children, it may be that they've come back because the assessment and where we've agreed and signposted them to has not worked in the way that we originally hoped it would. But some of them could be that they're re-referred after a significant period of time at the end of our previous involvement. But as I outlined in the information, it is an area that we monitor closely. We are doing this audit work. We can present the outcome of that audit work, and the 20% rate is actually we would be in line with other authorities. We're not 20%, 22% even is not out of kilter with what other authorities see. Sometimes families do legitimately come back to a service after having a successful period of involvement. So not all re-referrals would be for a negative reason. But we are looking at it. We are looking at it in some detail, and I'm quite happy to present the findings of that audit to a future committee.
Thank you very much.
Chairman,
I think that would be it.
May I come back?
Yes, Mr.
Hello, Chair?
Yes, Mr. Kaufman.
Can I come back? Okay,
Yes.
thanks very much. It's just the paragraph, when I read the beginning of 12, it talks about the number of contacts and referrals remain relatively stable. Yeah. Re-referrals are measured to ensure that children are not being referred on numerous occasions because their needs have not been appropriately assessed. That's the bit that concerns me. I understand what Jane was saying about people coming backwards and forwards and get help at particular times, but I think it's because they haven't been appropriately assessed is a bit that worries me. Thank you.
I think it would be helpful if we take up the offer to bring back the report to a future meeting of this committee so they can be gone through in more detail. So if I could leave that with the officers to propose a date when it should come back to us, whether it would be at our next meeting in September or a later one, I will leave to the officers, but I would like to propose that it does come back to us. Sharon, did you want to comment?
No, I'm quite happy to bring that, and I'm quite happy to offer clarification that the reason for that sentence is that is something that we do monitor, but it's not all re-referrals. So I can clarify that point, but I'm quite happy to bring before a future panel the outcome of that auditing work.
Thank you. I have no one else.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I have no one else wanting to speak at the moment on this item, so we'll move to the final item on today's agenda, which is Leicestershire's response to tackling child criminal exploitation, and that starts on page 67 of your agenda pack, and I believe it is Donna Smalley that's going to present this to us.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to Leicestershire's response to child criminal exploitation, we move on from the strong example and success we've had with responding to CSE and missing within the Vulnerability Hub that you're aware houses our other colleagues from the two local authorities, police and health representation. The Office of Police and Crime Commissioner has continued to support us in our journey. As you're aware, there were 13 strands initially. We've moved down to the final 3, as it were. We retain the specialist CSE nurse and the police analyst. The police analyst obviously comes under the police now. The missing and safeguarding coordinator was a social worker, long experienced social worker who was a county employee. His post has just concluded at the end of March. Leicestershire County Council have recognised the value of the post, particularly around data analysis and looking at trends and tracking missing episodes for children. So we have managed to retain him in that post, as I feel it's really important. He also supports my work as a safeguarding consultant to Leicestershire Police in relation to their enforcement and investigations, particularly for county lines. We continue to work alongside the Violence Reduction Unit, and as Mr. Old commented around the connection between county lines activity, inclusion in schools, what I would say I can't emphasise enough is when we are considering vulnerabilities for children that may be exposed to predators who are looking to recruit for county lines activity, we don't look at the vulnerabilities in isolation, and we don't always consider them as a predictor. A predictor for us now is around school exclusion, missing episodes, a child with physical injuries, and if a child is arrested or is found in, as you're aware, a cuckooed property, which is a property potentially of a vulnerable person, where a drug dealer has moved in to manufacture and sell drugs from the premises. We've started to report solely on child criminal exploitation, and we just move into our second quarter. The majority of the referrals are still coming from children's social care. We are getting more inquiries, particularly from GPs, and that's really around our work from first response to work with GP and health forums to increase their knowledge and understanding of predictors of child criminal exploitation. And I can't really emphasise enough around the links to emotional well-being of children and young people, and self-harm is another indicator that we are aware of. This quarter is the first quarter that we've started to look at more detail around information from our health colleagues. And as you can see in the report, from a health perspective, lots of the young people that we're offering a service to are open to child and mental health services for a variety of different reasons, but we believe that this is a strong predictor that this child could be vulnerable and be available to predators. I remain the service manager for field work, so I have responsibility for screening staff based in first response, which closes the loop between the Vulnerability Hub and our field work teams. So we are consciously aware that we are actively screening and looking for any signs of exploitation when children's referrals come in. The partnership work has continued to offer opportunities to look for reachable moments with children and young people. And I'm very proud that in relation to our overall data, the last 3 years, our county has been the county that's responded to children that are at risk of exploitation. So not children that sadly have already been abused within this form of abuse, but children who are on the periphery, who may be starting to use the internet or have been sourced by a predator on the internet. And lots of our work remains around offering that 6-week preventative pack. In relation to our out of area young people that we host, part of the missing coordinator's role is to liaise with the placing authority and to assist them with a strategic approach to manage the young person's safety whilst in our area. And we manage that alongside Leicestershire Police. Our notifications team within Leicestershire County Council contacts ourselves and the police of any new notifications of children placed in our area. So we continue to reach out to placing authorities and ask them if there is a reference to any form of exploitation which may leave the children at risk in our area. In terms of priorities and moving on, I'm pleased to say that we are starting to amalgamate with our colleagues in the Youth Offending Service, as we've recognised that potentially the work that's offered to offer continuity for a child is provided by our specialist youth workers within that department and our CSE social workers. So they are working together to provide services to children and families who are being corrupted by exploitation. I've commented on our latest consideration for a film production. This will be provided by Fixia, who provided the 2 films, Breck's Last Game and Kaylee's Love Story. This is a different attempt. This is a reach to communities and families as well as professionals, and it's asking if you are listening to children. And there is a subliminal message underneath the scenarios that are used around potentially a grandmother talking to her grandson, and as he's looking out the window, he's saying, "I've got to leave, Gran, because there's a man that's exploiting me, and I have 10 wraps of heroin hidden within my shirt." And it's asking families to recognise any signs about children that could be vulnerable to exploitation. We in Leicestershire have delivered the Child Criminal Exploitation Framework from 2019 to 21. And we continue to support the regional officers in their work and their fight against exploitation.
Thank you very much, Donna. It's an excellent report, and in its own way it's a very positive report. I currently have 3 speakers who would like to ask questions: Mr. Welsh, and then Mr. Parton, and then Mr. Sheehan, and then we all have to be out, I think, by about 10 to 4, quarter to 4, to allow the leader to prepare and the chief executive prepare for their briefing at 4 o'clock. Thank you. Mr. Welsh.
Thank you, Chairman. A question for Donna. You talked earlier about county lines. What influence has the COVID situation had on county lines? And sort of at the sharp end, is there more dealing? Is there less dealing? Has it changed? Are the police able to spot it with less activity on the street? Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Welsh. In relation to the current activity, we have seen a reduction in missing episodes for our most, if you like, prolific young people that go missing. And I think when we are out and we are talking to providers and to young people, they've been quite frightened since COVID-19 has been around. So we've seen a reduction in that way. Our concern, as yours is around the underbelly, really, of County Lines activity. We have an enforcement planned within the next 2 weeks that Leicestershire County Council will support the police in identifying any safeguarding issues for the properties that the police will be executing warrants. So that's a change, and that's from the success of Operation Lionheart that you're all aware of, in relation that the police can't act in isolation. What we are interested in is in cuckooed properties, so properties where there are young adults or vulnerable people, if there are any young people in those premises that may be being utilised for this activity. So in terms of your question around intelligence and the development, the Force Intelligence Bureau still continues to look at that intelligence, and my colleague in YOS, the service manager, we're now meeting with the Force Intelligence Bureau to try and develop what we are seeing currently, because you were quite right to suggest it's possibly more undercover than it usually is.
Thank you very much, Donna. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now have Mr. Parton, Mr. Sheehan and Mr. Kaufman, and then I'm afraid I'm going to close it after that. If you could keep your points as brief as possible, that would be helpful, because we do have another 2 items on the agenda to discuss, which is our meeting, and I know Mr. Ord would like to speak to us as well. So, Mr. Parton.
Good afternoon, Donna.
Hello.
The question relates to pages 68 and 69 with your point 8 that you did touch on. So you've partially answered the question regarding the remaining components supported by the SPDF project. So obviously the missing and safeguarding coordinator, but obviously, so looking at the dates with the child criminal exploitation coordinator, what's the plan once in 30 days time, once this post finishes, Donna?
In relation to the missing and safeguarding coordinator?
The detective inspector, the child criminal exploitation coordinator, June 19 to June 2020.
In relation to that particular post, that's supported by Leicestershire Police. So there is a continuum and a plan that Leicestershire Police could speak to in relation to increasing their response to child criminal exploitation. As I've mentioned, it's a named police officer, and it should read that she remains in post to 2021.
Okay. Right. Mr. Sheehan.
Hi, Donna. It's good to hear from you again.
Hello.
I represent Forest and Lewisham Division, which is on the edge of the county. We've got Derbyshire close by and Staffordshire a little bit further away. I'd like to hear what you can tell me to assure me that you've got cooperation with the police forces in Derbyshire and Staffordshire. I'm concerned about drugs finding their way into my area from places like Swadlincote and Burton, and whether the forces in Leicestershire and those other 2 counties are cooperating to ensure that that's dealt with effectively.
Yes, in relation to, I touched on very briefly about the regional response to criminal exploitation. Leicestershire Police and Derbyshire Police and Links Police are represented across the region. What we are trying to do is to develop a resource that echoes what Leicestershire does. If a young person crosses Leicestershire's path, they develop a package that goes with the young person if they're moved. Lots of our young people are moved by by their placing authority in response to forms of exploitation. So if a child is placed in Leicestershire, say from Northamptonshire, and an incident of harm occurs, the package and the information that we know about them would be passed on to Derbyshire, say if they move placements with them. But I think you're right to raise that issue. Leicestershire Police have lots of contact with London Met Police in respect of county line activity coming from London down to towns and cities locally. Obviously, we cross borders with Derbyshire, Lincolnshire, the city, Rutland, so we are on a daily basis looking and sourcing information. But the Force Intelligence Bureau are the people that develop those links, and that's based within Leicestershire Police.
Yeah, that's very good. The region that you've mentioned is the East Midlands, and of course Staffordshire's in the West Midlands, so
yes,
maybe a little bit further work needs to be done there, I think.
Yes, Okay, I'll take that point on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Mr. Kaufman, and then I've got just the date of the next meeting, and then Mr. Auld, before we have to close, ready for the next people to come in. Mr. Kaufman.
Yeah, very quickly, page 68 at the top. Are they relocated in the South Wigston County Council offices or in the Wigston Magna, the police station in Wigston Magna? There's no South Wigston police station.
It is based in South Wigston. It's on Bullhead Road. So it's located opposite the training centre. So we're based in the old South Wigston police station on Bullhead Road. So it is in South Wigston.
I think you'll find it maybe Bullhead Street, and I think it is in Wigston Magna. I don't know of a South Wigston police station.
Oh, right. Okay, so it's
anyway.
Yes. Confirmation.
If that could be just checked, Donna, and
Yes,
we make
I
sure
can-
we're
I
going
can
to the right
change that,
place.
Chair.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I don't have anyone else at the moment, unless my Vice Chair, Mrs. Seaton, did you want to add anything? No, thank you very much. Just to let you know that the next meeting of this committee is due to take place on the 1st of September 2020. Whether it will be done like this, whether it will be done with us all on holiday somewhere, or whether it will be done with us sitting round a table, I don't know at this time. Now, before I do close the meeting, I'd like to ask Mr. Auld if he'd like to say a few words to us.
Thank you, Chair. This is my last meeting being called to account by Overview and Scrutiny for Children and Families. It's been, I think, a really constructive relationship, one that I've enjoyed, and I hope you keep your eyes firmly on the button to make sure that everyone gets called to account, so that the 5 areas that we want to develop for children are actually delivered. And with that, I'd like to say goodbye to you all.
We wish you thank you very much, Ivan, and we thank all of us. Thank you very much for all you've done over the years, and we would like to wish you every good fortune, and we'll miss you, but I know you've left the department in good hands, in an optimistic way, and that you are leaving the people into. But no, I thank you very much. I would also like to thank everybody who's taken part today. I'm sorry we had a few hiccups at the beginning. I really must learn not to touch buttons. Once I'm set up, do not touch anything else. And I'd like to thank all the officers for their help and support. Safe journey, keep safe, and hope to see you all physically very soon rather than just over a computer link. But thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Hilary. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.